This is Basketball Bucksline from TNT Equipment for all your construction rental needs on 610 WTVN.
And welcome. We are back on 610 WTVN, which is way back when Tony White joined this fine radio establishment. We were for many, many years, and we are back on 610 WTVN with Basketball Bucksline tonight. The Buckeyes coming off a couple of very disappointing losses, especially, I suppose, the Thursday night game against Illinois, just because that is a team, Tony, that you expect at home to beat. I know they're playing a lot better, but they're still only 10-15 for a reason. And to lose that game at home kind of put a crimp in your bubble picture for the NCAA tournament. But then you had a chance leading at the half at Michigan State yesterday, feeling like, boy, you could totally erase that bad loss with a win in East Lansing, and they proceeded in the second half to score 13 points and commit 11 turnovers. And that's not a very good ratio. They end up losing 62-44. Offensively, Tony, in the last two games, they were 35 for 103 from the floor, 34%, and 6 for 28 for three, 21%. That's generally not going to get it done. How do you get out of this offensive funk that they're in?
Well, first, I'm going to say I think 34% actually sounds better
than it looks
like.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. I agree.
34% is actually, if somebody said, don't look at the numbers, just pick what percentage they shot, I would have said something like 28%.
Yep.
Because it was brutal. It was brutal. And, big problem here. I mean, this is a team right now that has no offensive identity, in my opinion, because they haven't had anybody consistently make plays for them offensively in the last month.
Yep.
And, it's getting to the point where it's really hard come late February, early March to find your identity offensively. It really is. It's hard to say, hey, okay, this person's going to step up and play differently than they've played for the last 4.5 months. That usually doesn't happen. Maybe sometimes a senior, maybe sometimes a junior. But when you look at this team, very rarely does that happen for a young player, a sophomore or a freshman. But when you look at this team, you go, okay, well, who's going to step up and do something, and just take over this team offensively and give it a new identity on the offensive end? Because, I mean, Matt, you can't win Big Ten games scoring in the 50s and the 40s.
No.
I mean, you can't. It's impossible. It's not going to happen.
4 for 21 in the second half yesterday.
I mean,
that game was there for the taking. Michigan State did not play very well. Ohio State's defensive effort was fine. I mean, very good. I thought they had the want-to. I thought they played hard. They just couldn't put the ball in the basket.
And Michigan State came into that game wounded, with Josh Langford out. I mean, that's a big loss for them.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking a kid who's averaging 16 points a game or so, really good defender, kid who could shoot the ball for them with athleticism. They were wounded, and we've seen them be a little wounded over the last couple weeks, 2-3 weeks since that's happened. So they were there for the taking to begin with. Then Nick Ward goes down with the fractured left hand. And now it's like there's blood in the water everywhere.
Yep.
And for Ohio State, going in there and Nick Ward essentially doesn't play for the last 30 minutes of that game. Boy, what an opportunity lost to rack up, the new buzzword, the quad one win. What an opportunity to rack up a quad one win and really lock down an NCAA tournament berth unless the wheels absolutely come flying off. But, what happens is essentially the same thing that happened in the Michigan State game at Schottenstein Center, except over more extended period of time. Ohio State was with Michigan State in the Schottenstein Center game a month or so ago, a month and a half ago. In the last 4 minutes, Michigan State blew them out in the last 4 minutes. Same thing essentially happened in East Lansing, except they blew them out over like the last 8 minutes.
Yep.
And they were with them, and then gone. Mm-hmm. And that's distressing from the fact they lost, but also distressing from the fact they didn't really learn from that first loss and kick that extra gear in when they needed to in the second half, last 10 minutes of the game.
If you have a comment for Tony White or myself, I am on social media. I've already got a couple of questions, but I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. If you would like to tweet a question at me, or phone lines are open, 614-821-WTVN. That's 614-821-9886. You can also call 1-800-610-WTVN. I mentioned for the week, we have talked glowingly throughout the course of the season about what we've seen from some of the freshmen, in particular Luther Muhammad. I love the kid. I love his competitiveness. And we were wondering, is he going to hit a freshman wall? Has he, Tony? Because
no longer, Matt.
Because he looked a little out of control yesterday. He was 0 for 9 from the floor. He was 1 for 6. He was 1 for 15 in 2 games last week from the floor. And I just have to wonder if he's tapped out. I mean, he's given the effort. Don't misunderstand me. But is he hit that wall where the body wants to, but physically he's not able to?
I'm starting to worry that that's the case. I mean, look, the kid is a super talent. I'm really a big fan of Luther Muhammad. The things that he can do defensively, the things that he can do offensively in terms of his quickness with the basketball, his ability one-on-one to make moves and make plays, create separation. I mean, one of the marks of a truly potential great offensive player is the ability to one-on-one, nobody around you, not on a screen, create separation. Because I'm that fast, that quick, that good with the basketball. Luther Muhammad has demonstrated one-on-one as a freshman, he's going to be able to create separation. And you project that 3 years down the line, I mean, that's an impressive offensive player. But he's starting to look a little crispy around the edges. And you know, maybe you go Michigan State. Okay, Michigan State is a team with a great defensive reputation. Yeah, again, reputation. I'm not sure how great they are defensively this year, but they've played historically under Tom Izzo, very good defense, and they've had some good games defensively this year. But you look back to the Illinois game. I mean, look back. Illinois, by no stretch of the imagination, is Illinois some great defensive team. And Luther Muhammad goes 0 for 6 from the field. I mean, 0 for 6 from the field. Plays 30 minutes. Hits 2 free throws, has 1 assist and 1 turnover and 4 fouls.
Mm-hmm.
That's the line for a kid who struggled hard to play up to the tempo of the game, because 4 fouls, to 1 assist, so he wasn't really a factor passing the ball either, despite the fact he played 30 minutes and had the ball in his hands a lot, and every shot he took he missed. That's a kid who looks, you know, and that's a line for a kid who looks tired and he's not making those extra plays and extra motions to make those shots go in or those passes become assists. And this is what we talk about with freshmen. You wonder if they're going to hit that wall, and now you're starting to worry that he's hit that wall.
Comment from Brett on Twitter. I felt like last night Ohio State got out-toughed against Michigan State. Felt like they were there, and they just wilted in the second half to their physicality. Wesson in particular. I imagine he means Caleb Wesson. Do you agree with that, not agree with that? What do you think?
Well, I thought for the majority of that game, especially the first half, I thought Ohio State really played tough. I mean,
I agree.
They were scrapping.
Yep.
They were really scrapping. For a long time, they had a pretty darn good lead on Michigan State on the glass, which, you know, Nick Ward not being in that game for a long period of time is part of it. But, you know, I mean, Michigan State, even without Nick Ward, they're not exactly, you know, some lightweights on the glass. I mean, you know, there's some kids out there who can rebound and did some decent rebounding. But I thought, for the most part, Ohio State, for the first 25 minutes or so of that game, really competed hard, played hard, didn't back down, took the hits. It felt like the last 15 minutes when the shots started to not fall. I mean, just completely not fall. This team started to panic a little bit. And it looked like that panic affected their game, both the toughness part of it, the defensive part of it, the mental part of the defensive side, and then just the offense. It became a one-on-one fest in a lot of ways on the offensive end the last 10, 15 minutes of the game. And so I think that those offensive struggles made this team dial back that toughness that we saw in the first 25 minutes. And look, it was part of that toughness was a big part of why they were in that game, by that time. And when you take that away and you take away their ability to make shots, I'm not surprised that Michigan State ended on a 20-2 run. I'm not.
Dovetailing off of Brett's question, it felt to me like, especially with Ward out in the second half, I can think of at least 3, and there probably were more occasions where Caleb Wesson got the ball in the post and they weren't doubling him. And he passed out of that. And to me, especially when they're struggling to score, doesn't he have to go? If they're not doubling him, he's your best offensive option. And if he gets it in the post, I just felt like he needed to be more selfish, so to speak. One time he tried to pass out, in fact, tried a cross-court pass. It got stolen. It was one of the 11 turnovers in the second half. Do you agree? Does he have to? I mean, if you're Chris Holtmann, do you talk to him about that? Like, Caleb, you got, you're there. Take it. Go after it. Be more aggressive. What did you see?
Yes, I think that, Caleb Wesson is one of the few players on this team who should have an offensive advantage when he's one-on-one especially. And I thought he was more passive against Michigan State in the last 25 minutes of that game. Not so much the first 10, 15 minutes, but the last 25 minutes of that game, he kind of pulled himself back a little bit. And I think a lot of that is, Caleb Wesson is a player who doesn't play well with contact. He's a big guy, but he doesn't play big in terms of his strength. He plays weaker than you'd like to see. I mean, he is a guy whose game has got to get markedly stronger. How many layups have we seen Caleb Wesson miss over the last year and a half when he's got a little contact? How many little shots, turnaround shots, where he's not being blocked or it's not being affected by somebody above his hand or above the rim, but he's got a little contact around his body and he can't make the shot. His game, he plays big when he squares up in the post and he catches the ball in the post. He plays big, but he plays weak. And I think Michigan State is a team, especially down low. They body you and they push you and they bump you and they try and get into your mind on the block. And I think as that game got on, I think Caleb Wesson was affected by that. I think that even with Nick Ward not in the game, I think that Caleb Wesson felt that contact and started to play away from that contact because that's not his strength. And that put a lot of pressure on a lot of Ohio State guys on the perimeter to start making shots, and we saw the result of that in the second half. That was, almost no shots going down.
Is that something in terms of Caleb Wesson's style of play and, playing weak, as you put it? Is that something that can come? He's only a sophomore.
Yes.
Is that, junior, senior year, more time in the weight room, more, experience? Is that something that you see he's not going to be like that a year from now, or he shouldn't be like that a year from now?
I think that's right. He shouldn't be like that a year from now, and I think it's within his power not to be. I think he's got to lose weight. He's got to lose more weight. He just got to lose more weight, and he's got to get stronger. He's got to increase his athleticism. And I think losing weight will help him that. You lose 10, 15, 20 pounds. Look at what Nick Ward did. I mean, you lose 15, 20 pounds, and suddenly you got Nick Ward running the court, beating guards down the floor regularly. I mean, he did that against Ohio State. He's done that all year because he's that much of an athlete when you take 20 pounds away from him. I think Caleb Wesson needs to lose another 20 pounds and get more bulk to him on the muscle side, but still net lose 20 pounds so that he has more explosion. He can have that inside arrogance and strength about him that he doesn't really have right now, that is really the missing ingredient to his game.
All right, Tony and I are going to take a break. When we come back, I've gotten flooded with comments, questions about Ohio State's offense. If you would, that is on Twitter. You can keep tweeting at me. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. We'll get to those. Also, phone lines open if you'd like to call us, 614-821-9886. That's 821-WTVN. We are back with more of Basketball Bucksline after this on Sports Radio 610 WTVN.
I thought Caleb had some really good moments. He did get fatigued tonight, or today, more so than I remember him getting fatigued in a game. So we're going to have to, that's why we had to take him out on several occasions.
That is Chris Holtman after the game yesterday, talking about Caleb Wesson and exactly, Tony, what you're talking about, getting fatigue. So that's probably not something necessarily you can remedy this year, but long term for his basketball future at Ohio State and beyond, that's something I'm sure that they've got to address.
Yeah, and keep in mind he's still a sophomore. I mean, a sophomore.
He's a young player, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday was a game where he didn't get in foul trouble.
No.
Hooray! But he's still,
He's learning. He is still learning to play
He's really
this game.
good. He's going to be really good.
Yes.
He already is really good, but he's going to be really good.
And he's going to be a very, very good 4-year player for Ohio State. I mean, he's going to be here through his senior year because he's not going to pros, early. I mean, maybe at the end of his career he has an opportunity in the NBA or overseas, but he's not a leave guy. He's not a first-round pick kind of a guy. So you got to expect he's going to be here for 4 years. And as a young player, as a sophomore, he's already made an impact on the team and on the league. Those are very positive things. There's a lot still he has to learn about being a big guy in this league. And the Michigan State game, I thought, he had a great first half. I think the second half exposed him for being not physically ready to dominate a game to the level you have to dominate it when a team like Michigan State is playing that type of physical play down low.
Okay, Tony on Twitter. The only time I've called Bucksline was when Brandon Fuchs-Cheatham was getting major minutes back in 2004. Boy. With him on the floor, I always felt like it was 4-on-5 on offense. Keyshawn Woods has reached that point for me this year. Might have to make my once-in-a-decade call to Matt McCoy. So I replied to Tony on Twitter. I said, we'll take that question, but tweet or call more often. But what is your comment towards what you're seeing from Keyshawn right now?
Well, first of all, golf clap for the Brandon Fuchs-Cheatham out of the archive reference.
Yes.
I mean, that's a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
Boy, yeah. This is one of those where, you wonder if Chris Holtman's stopping at the state liquor store on the way home after practices right now. Because, I mean, you look at the film from November and you see Keyshawn Woods play and you know Chris Holtman saying to himself, man, we got a good player.
Yes, they did. It really felt like he was exactly what they needed.
It was like, oh my gosh. This guy can be a really good player, and wait till he gets better and he gets used to the league, and he's out there, and we can start him, and he's making plays. Oh my gosh, this is going to be terrific! And now it's like bizarro world for this kid. I mean, he has completely gone backwards, and his play at times is not only invisible. At times it hurts. I mean, it pulls the game back. From Ohio State. It doesn't advance a game or just keep it where it is. It pulls it back. I mean, the Illinois game, his line is just brutal. I mean, you're talking 1 for 6 from the field. 1 for 6 in 25 minutes, 1 for 6, 3 points, 2 turnovers, 3 assists. I mean, that's awful.
Yep.
That is awful. I mean, that is from a senior playing 25 minutes. That is terrible production, and you can't expect the guy who plays. I mean, in the Illinois game, he was the fifth highest minutes of anybody on that team, meaning he's essentially a starter. And for a starter to go out there and give you that performance, a senior starter, essentially, it's hard to win games when you have senior guys doing that. It's just hard. It's so hard.
But here's the problem, and I understand what you're saying. But what is the solution there isn't.
No.
For Chris Holtman, there
No.
isn't. I mean, Dwayne Washington at times has looked really good, but you talked about Luther Muhammad hitting a freshman wall. It feels like Dwayne Washington is the same kind of way with me. Kind of like you said about Luther. One-on-one, he's a guy that can beat a guy, but he went 1 for 7. CJ's these guys got to play. They just somehow have got to start playing better.
And I've said this before. Chris Holtman is pushing every button,
no question,
possible.
Yep,
every button possible. And so there's not like there's a button out there that he hasn't pushed. He's gone, let's try this one now. We haven't tried it before. We'll try this one now. I guarantee you, he's pulled every trick in the coaching book that he can think of to get Keyshawn Woods, C.J. Jackson. Andre Wesson has gotten better.
Andre has.
Over the last month,
has.
He's gotten better. So
like everyone yesterday, he struggled. He was 2 for 10. But I agree.
But overall,
he's stepping up.
Better.
I agree.
Right. So, take that game out yesterday, but overall he's gotten better. But so the whatever buttons they're pushing with respect to him have moved the needle. But the other guys, nothing. Look, at some point, there's nothing wrong with going to church a couple extra times during the week and asking for a little divine
praying for a jump shot,
praying for a little divine intervention. Because as a coach, there's only so much you can do. I mean, you can't go out. Gary Williams used to say it all the time. When you miss a jump shot, you come over to the sidelines. He would look at you straight in the face and say, "Look, dude, I can't make the shot for you. I get the play. I can call the play. I can school the play. I can make sure that you're ready to shoot it. But I can't make it for you. You got to do that for me." And that, in the end, that's where it comes down with Chris Holtmann.
Ryan says, this looks like a team that has lost confidence. They already are offensively challenged, but they have zero confidence, especially the second half and down the stretch against Michigan State. Would you agree with that?
Ryan's completely right. This team has zero confidence, and they're so fragile. I thought against Michigan State to start the game, they got some momentum offensively, and they looked like their confidence was building, but they're so fragile right now in their confidence that any bad stretch happens, they're done. I mean, it's like everybody starts panicking on the offensive end, like, okay, who's going to make a shot? Who's going to make a shot? There's nobody on this team who you go, okay, we're all struggling. Get it to that guy.
You know what they're missing? Keita Bates-Diop.
Right. By the way, with Keita Bates-Diop, this is a top 10 team. Because everybody else falls into place.
Yes.
C.J. Jackson, I guarantee you, is an excellent basketball player if Keita Bates-Diop is on this team because there's no pressure on him anymore. Right. It's like, hey, just make a few shots, son, and now he's going to be averaging 15 points a game.
Are they flirting with a Big Ten championship if Keita's still on this team?
I think so. I really do.
I kind of do, too.
I really
just
do.
Because he would be everything they're missing.
Everything. And it would allow...
And it's not like they're awful. They are really offensively struggling.
And it would allow everybody else to settle into a role that they're already comfortable in coming in.
Yep.
Andre Wesson, C.J. Jackson, Keyshawn Woods be like, hey, son, come in. But if you don't play well, you're coming back. You're coming out. But you don't have to shoot a lot of shots. Just come on there and play solid. Play a good senior. And the freshman coming in and just give me good minutes on defense. You don't need to score 15 points for me. And when you do, great. But he would have allowed everybody just to settle into their roles. And right now, nobody is comfortable with their roles. No one.
All right, we're going to take a break for the bottom of the hour. When we come back, more of your Twitter comments. If you want to call us, too, 614-821-WTVN, 614-821-9886. Back after this, Basketball Bucksline, another half hour to go on 610 WTVN.
Baseline to baseline, we've got the Buckeyes covered. Basketball Bucksline from TNT Equipment on 610 WTVN.
Basketball Bucksline back on 610 WTVN, and it will be 7 to 8 every Monday night for the remainder of the season as long as the Buckeyes are playing basketball. So join us 7 to 8, and it's great that everybody found us because we're getting a lot of comments from people that were talking to us before. In addition to your tweets, which I'm taking a lot at Matt McCoy Radio, you can also call us at 614-821-WTVN. John has dialed those numbers. And, John, you're up with on Basketball Bucksline with Tony White. What's on your mind?
Well, I was just curious if some of the onus is on Coach. I wasn't watching the game that closely, but I felt like we went from up 6 or 8 to down somewhere between 6 and 10 quickly before he even called a timeout. Is the onus on the coach to use one of those timeouts before it gets out of hand to calm players down, or maybe say, look, Wesson's got one foul, force the ball inside more while there's two big guys on Michigan State's team are in trouble? And is that more on the coach or on the players?
Right. Hey, John, I have to admit, and thanks for the call, that I did take note that they finished the game with 3 timeouts. They didn't call them. Now, I don't know if it would have made any difference, Tony, but what do you think, to John's point, when the game's Michigan State's making a run, when do you use timeouts, when do you not, and why do you think Chris Holtmann had 3 to burn at the end of the game?
Well, it's a great question. John's got, it's a great question he throws out there. I really think coming into this game, the game plan for this team, because they're struggling so much offensively, the game plan was keep as many of your timeouts as you can keep to the last 3 minutes of the game, and then use them all to set up offensive plays in a tight game. Because this team, right now, they don't have a lot of offensive confidence. And to say, hey, okay, guys, go down there and score in a tight basketball game in the last 2 minutes, run some offense and figure it out. I don't think this coaching staff has a lot of confidence that they're going to be able to do that. I really think the game plan was, you know what, we're going to keep those timeouts, and then when we get down in the last 2-3 minutes, we're going to call frequent whistles when the ball's in our hands to go set up a play to come down and try and maximize our chance to get 2, 3, 4 possessions with a score in the last 2-3 minutes, which could win the game for us. And I think what happened was they were thinking that way, and the game just got quickly away from them. It became like an 8-10 point game.
It went from 42 to 42, and then all of a sudden they're down double digits.
Right. And it was like, okay, well, it's too, I still want to keep those timeouts. Maybe these guys will dig their way out of it. If I burn those timeouts now, I'm not going to have them down the stretch when I'm going to desperately need them. Let's hope we can dig our way out. And it never happened.
No.
And you end up going to the locker room because they went on a 22 run to end the game.
Mike is also calling in. Mike, what's on your mind?
Hey, man. Funny you bring up Keita Bates-Diop. Just today, I checked on his stats in the NBA.
I know.
And the guy's only playing like 5 minutes a game. He's averaging about a point. It's always a personal situation. People decide to go pro and all that stuff. But I really think you mentioned how good he would be on this team right now, how good this team would be. But, if I don't know what do you think about, folks like that and going earlier, you have one more year to go and improve his skills and be that much better? Or do you think right now he may be sitting back being pretty frustrated playing 5 minutes a game?
It's interesting, too, Mike. He's been up and down between the Minnesota Timberwolves G League team and the T-Wolves, and he's not gotten in 90% of the games in the NBA. He hasn't gotten in. So he was at the Thursday game against Illinois, Tony, and I was wondering if he's sitting there going, God, I should have come back. I mean, I really wonder if he thinks that. I don't begrudge anybody that wants to make that step, and he is making a nice paycheck, but you wonder if his long-term future would have been better if he would have stuck it out one more year.
Matt, I guarantee you he was thinking, God, I should have stuck it out on draft night.
When he slid into the middle of the second round.
Yes. And, you don't give up a year of eligibility to be a second-round pick. You give up a year of eligibility to be a first-round pick, to get that guaranteed contract and to know that you're going to be out there and they're going to play you some because they're giving you a guaranteed contract and then you got a spot on the roster.
Yep.
Now, he got a 2-year guaranteed contract, which is unusual for a second-round draft pick because I think him and his agent played it well and said, this kid might just go overseas. He's so disappointed in being not being a first-round draft pick, he'll go overseas and get some amount of money for being, more money than a normal kid would be able to get over there. And the Timberwolves said, okay, we'll give him a guaranteed contract for a couple years because that'll keep him in the NBA and we'll get to work with him and develop him more. Still, the money he lost and the opportunity he lost, from being a second-round pick to a first-round pick, you don't do that. You don't give up a year of eligibility for that. So he's regretting, and he's a great kid and it was a great basketball player for Ohio State, but he's regretting his decision from way back on draft night. And if you project him on this team, and he knows this, and he'll never say it. Chris Holtmann will never say it. But if he had stuck around like he should have, because the draft boards were talking about him being a late first-round pick, and why would you ever take that risk?
Yep.
Especially when you can get stronger and play yourself into that top 15, maybe even a lottery pick if you have a great year. And he could have had a great year. But he could have solidified this team and made himself a top 15 pick just by sticking around.
Mark's question on Twitter, another one about Chris Holtmann. Chris Holtmann can clearly coach, but I'm wondering if he's being too nice since the win in Indiana. Does he need to go ballistic on these guys? I guess is what Mark is asking.
Well, I'll tell you.
Does he need to go Gary Williams on these guys?
I can tell you this. There is a limited rate of return on going ballistic, having lived through that. Chris Holtmann is a guy. He's a player's coach. He's a player's coach.
But he gets fiery, though, doesn't he?
Yes. He's a player's coach with a serious edge to him because you can see that on the sidelines that he is, like, for example, Thad Matta would never, criticize or bark at a player for a play that person did or did not make. He didn't do that too much. I mean, it was rare, very rare, and it had to be pretty bad for him to do something like that. Chris Holtmann, he'll bark at you. Mm-hmm. You go out there, you make a bad play, he will bark at you right there on the sidelines. And so that tells me, and we didn't see a whole lot of that last year, by the way. There was not a whole lot of that last year. There was some, but not much. This year, much more than last year. And that tells me, A, he's frustrated with this team. And B, he thinks that if he just sits back and is more passive, he's not going to get results from this team that he needs to. They need a push. Now, we're not in practice. We don't know what's happening in practice. The bulk of the yelling happens in practice.
Right.
I got to believe that he's on these guys in practice. And I think we're seeing some of those edges in the games when he's barking at these guys. But, it's a fair question as to whether or not he needs to be on them harder.
One thing I would get on guys for is effort, and I don't feel like effort's the issue. They're just, maybe the Illinois game a little bit. I was at that game, and I felt like Illinois out hustled them a few times, but I also felt like they were frustrated, and it was affecting them. So I don't know if, an effort thing I can see really getting on him. If you're just not making shots, I mean, of course, like you said, Gary Williams will say, guys, you got to put the ball in the basket. I'm sure he's saying all those things, but is that a yellable thing about? You know what I'm saying?
I would say that for a reasonable coach like a Thad Matta or Chris Holtmann, they're not going to yell at you for missing shots. They're not going to do that. And by the way, that's the number one thing that's causing this team problems. Now,
turnovers.
1A is turnovers.
Yes.
You can get yelled at for turnovers because a lot of these turnovers are not by freshmen, but by guys who are seniors and juniors who just make horrifically dumb decisions. And that you can get yelled at pretty hard. And I think what you're seeing from Chris Holtmann is, and I agree with you, this team doesn't have an effort problem. They work hard out there. They've worked hard from the first exhibition game of this year. This is a hard-working team defensively and offensively. They give the effort. But they tend to make dumb plays with the basketball, and that runs a little thin after a while. And I think you're starting to see Chris Holtmann say, "Look, we are getting down to it. You guys got to pick it up and stop doing that."
I'm going to try to get through as many of the tweets as I can in our last segment. We got to take a break. Tony White and I are back after this as we continue with Basketball Bucksline on News Radio 610 WTVN. I want to give a shout out to everybody because I was wondering with our switch of stations here mid-season what kind of reaction we get. We've had callers, we've had my Twitter is flooded, and I don't even know if I'm going to get to all of them. So thank you everybody for listening and for tuning in. And again, next week we'll be on at 7 o'clock again, 7 to 8, right here on 610 WTVN. The Buckeyes have games at home against Northwestern and then at Maryland. And let me get to the first question I got tonight on Twitter that I haven't gotten to. What is the likelihood this Buckeye team makes the tournament? And if so, what seed do you guys see these guys getting? Right now, I can tell you, despite what happened last week, I saw a projection where they're 10 seeds still in because it's a soft bubble, and right now they have really good non-conference wins highlighted by the Cincinnati game. The way they're trending, though, Tony, they're squarely on the bubble. But what do you think the likelihood of them making this tournament is?
I really think it's 50-50 at this stage. I mean, I know right now, if it ended right now, they're in. Okay. But they've got such a difficult schedule down the stretch.
Agreed.
Such a difficult
You can't
schedule.
lose these Northwestern games.
No, I mean,
they got them twice. They got to beat them.
They got to beat them twice.
I mean, I know that sounds crazy to say Northwestern's a huge game. It's a huge game.
Matt, you're right. You've got to beat Northwestern twice. Ohio State, by losing to Rutgers, losing to Illinois, they have bad losses on their resume. They can't have any more bad losses. And on the flip side of the same coin, they need these wins. They got to
beat Iowa at home. They got to beat Wisconsin at the end of the year at home. I mean, if they do it, they're fine.
Right. If they can do those things, then I think they're in. Now, they can't go out in the Big Ten tournament and just get destroyed by 35 points. That could blow everything up. But they've got to beat Northwestern twice, and they've got to get a couple wins against top 25 teams down the stretch. I don't care. I don't really care who it is. It doesn't matter to me who it is. It would be more helpful if they won some games on the road. top 25 wins on the road are valued more than top 25 wins at home. But they've got to get at least a couple of them. They've got to beat Northwestern twice and get at least a couple top 25 wins. Pick them. Don't care who they are.
Steve on Twitter says, what do you think the fundamental issue is with the offense? Is it scheme? Is it players? Is it something else? It's my take that this team lacks a Conley or an Aaron Kraft even who could initiate the offense from the point and get the best out of his teammates. What do you think?
Well, it's not scheme. It's players. I mean, this is a team that has not – I mean, first of all, they don't have – Luther Muhammad has been at times a good catalyst for them at the point guard spot. But he does make some bad decisions because he's a freshman. He does make some bad decisions, and he's not the guy who can carry this team. He's not a guy who's going to create a lot of opportunities for his teammates. And so you really don't have a perimeter guy who creates opportunities for his teammates. He doesn't create opportunities for anybody else. I mean, the opportunities he creates for himself aren't even that good. But creating for other people, not really. I mean, one of the strengths about Keita Bates-Diop was that he generated so much attention. And he was such a good passer that he was able to make a move. The defense had to react, not just his guy, but other guys, and it left guys open. And so for Keita, he created opportunities for everybody else. They're just not.
Let's see. Doug on Twitter. We need to play more up-tempo and get out in transition on offense. Teams are just taking Caleb away, and we have no guys who can create their own shot except Dwayne Washington. Start running some more.
Well, I mean, the problem with that is the team that's the worst team in terms of turnovers in the Big Ten is going to take that number and add 20% to it. So you're going to have a team that's averaging 23 turnovers a game because this Ohio State team has shown that when you run the basketball, they're not very good in transition at not creating turnovers for themselves.
I thought we saw it yesterday that they had opportunities in transition and they just couldn't convert.
Right, and so they create a lot of turnovers in transition. If you have more transition opportunities, you're going to see more turnovers. That's why the half-court style that I think they're playing, trying to do transition when they have opportunities, but they're more of a half-court team. And I think the half-court style is because, A, Caleb Weston's their most consistent offensive player, and B, because when they get in transition, they turn the ball over way too much. And Coach Holtman realizes you can't turn the ball over as many times as they are turning it over and win consistently at this level. So he's trying to cut down on those turnovers by slowing the game down a little bit, which will also emphasize Caleb Weston, their best offensive player. And it's not working right now. I mean, you can't, again, 44 points against 50s against Illinois. I mean, that something has to change on the offensive side.
Okay. How we just outlined, we had the question about the NCAA tournament. This is what they have to do. How do they do that? I mean, what style of game does Ohio State have to play? Like they're playing Northwestern coming up next, and to me, that this is screaming an ugly 58-55 kind of win. But that might be how they have to go about their business because they're so challenged offensively. Like, if they had figured out a way to put the ball in the basket yesterday, that would have been a really ugly kind of game because Michigan State was struggling too. Is that how they're going to have to do it?
Yeah. This is no longer a pretty
It's not going to be 75-71 thrilling kind of win.
No. There's no more elegant basketball left for this team. I just don't see it. Unless they dramatically take a U-turn and become, a different team than they are. This team is going to win ugly coming out from down the stretch. You're just going to win ugly. And, the only way for this team to turn things around is to start making jump shots. I mean, it's as simple as that. They got to start making jump shots. They had jump shots against Michigan State. They missed those jump shots. They've got to start making those jump shots at a much better pace than they're making them now. If that starts to happen, maybe the offense opens up. Maybe we start seeing some, dynamic play, up and down transition because now they're making shots. They have more confidence. But right now, we got to crawl before we can walk. And this team needs to start making jump shots, pure and simple.
How do you coach that other than
shoot a lot of shots?
Shoot
a lot of shots. I mean, you got to shoot.
So is he running his offensive sets in there? I mean, is he dissecting that, or is it like guys just shoot today?
It is a lot. There's a lot of practice, I guarantee you, where guys are just shooting, trying to shoot their way back into confidence, shoot their way back in with form, back into what they've done historically, their ability to shoot historically. because the only way to get out of a shooting slump is to shoot more. And you might as well do that in practice versus a game and hopefully build that confidence back up.
This week, Northwestern on Wednesday, and then at Maryland, which Maryland feels like a really bad matchup to me.
Oh, geez.
It was a bad matchup at home.
Yeah.
But Northwestern, another team that I think is not as good as I think people thought they were going to be, but is that a must-win in your mind?
Without a doubt. You're talking a team that is 3-11 in the conference, 12-13 overall. They've lost 6 straight. A loss to Northwestern is an awful loss on your resume. And I think if they lose to Northwestern, I think it'll knock them out of the field. I think you'll see on bracketology and all those other things, you'll see Ohio State first 4 out, next 4 out, because that bad of a loss will cause everybody to go, wait a minute, what are we doing here with this Ohio State team? They have got to beat Northwestern. And, this is a team they should. I mean, Northwestern is, the good news about Ohio State that's averaging, 50 points a game right now scoring is Northwestern's awful offensively. So Ohio State can maybe score 60 points and win the game.
Yeah. What about playing at Maryland? How do you?
At this stage, I'm taking one at a time. I would love to look ahead. At this stage, we don't have that luxury. You got one at a time, and boy, focus up on Northwestern.
Yeah. Well, Bruno Fernando might have he's a really good player. But yes, and that is a Wednesday game. It's on the Big Ten Network. It is 8:30 tip-off, a late game. Tony, thanks.
Okay.
We are back next Monday, hopefully talking about a win. It would be great to get 2, but we certainly would like to talk about a win. Again, thanks, everybody, for all of your comments and your questions and phone calls. We are back with you next Monday. It is Basketball Bucksline. I'm Matt McCoy. That's our basketball analyst, Tony White. And we'll talk to you next week right here on News Radio 610 WTVN.